Welcome again, faithful guests. Thanks for tuning in to Redwood Castle Studio. I hope this video will be a great source of spiritual motivation to you. If you're encouraged by today's message, please be so kind as to subscribe to this channel and help others by sharing it. I receive no incentive for asking this because I'm not compensated by any advertisers. I counsel and teach on profound truths because I get great satisfaction by offering lessons and advice about improving and mastering your life. And in this case, knowing if you're experiencing a spiritual awakening and how to understand it and enhance it to benefit both you and others around you. With respect to those listening from Eastern or Asian cultures, and particularly if English is your second language, I'll do my best to speak slow now. Many college-level phrases and vocabulary words will be used, so I'll try to slow down my speech and place each subject in context that is not overly difficult to understand. So regardless of what you've been through, particularly in your spiritual journey, or what you're going through now, I'd like you to smile. Get ready. There's something very enlightening coming your way. But first, I'd like to share with you a story that I heard about how God was looking down from heaven and he noticed a great teacher named John who had helped hundreds of people through his classes. The Creator was so pleased that he decided to come down to visit John during his study time. When God appeared, he said that he'd grant the teacher one wish. Hesitating, John smiled and said, "God, I'd like my own private highway to the Hawaiian Islands." God reluctantly said, "No way, John. Do you know what an environmental problem that would cause? And besides, I'd have to hire hundreds of workers just for your road to paradise. How about a different wish?" John thought and hesitated again, then said, "Okay, God, all my life I've had problems understanding women. I'd like to know how they think, what they want, and how to make them happy." This time God hesitated for a moment, then said, "Would you like your highway made of asphalt or concrete?" What? Just crickets? No applause? No flowers? Okay, so today we're going to talk about spiritual awakenings and how to recognize if you're in the midst of one. This presentation is a compilation of over 9 months of research and includes the ideas of many great minds that have taught on the subject, just a few of which are Nikola Tesla, Goddard, Cannon, Deepak Chopra, Dr. Jordan Peterson, and the famed Swiss psychoanalyst Dr. Carl Jung. I can promise you that what you're about to hear will be the most comprehensive presentation on this subject matter on video today. It's a rather long presentation that will require a lot of spiritual guts and endurance to internalize, but I promise you it will be highly beneficial if you watch the entire movie. Take breaks along the way if you need to, But don't miss a single minute, because you've been divinely appointed to see this. That may sound difficult or hard to believe now, but you'll see this truth materialize before the end. In essence, you'll be hearing the Cliff Notes version of at least 5 famous books on the subject and over 30 lectures by well-known spiritual masters, gurus, and teachers. Additionally, I've gone through an intense spiritual transformation over the past 20 years, and I'll be infusing my own experience into this show, which will further validate what the great teachers will reveal to you as well. As a further introduction, I'd like to share that no matter what spiritual or religious background you are practicing now, this presentation will indeed apply to you, even if you're sitting on either polar opposite of that spectrum. For example, an agnostic all the way up to a fundamentalist Christian. That means this teaching applies to everyone that will listen with an open mind, regardless of any current lack of a spiritual nature. If you're one of those closed-minded people that firmly believes only members of your church, organization, or spiritual community will be given the chance to see divine light or receive enlightenment, maybe even be in the presence of God someday, then if you believe that way, it's better to close out the video now, because watching it will boggle your mind and probably scare the living daylights out of you. Someone just said, "Well, John, nothing scares me, but I'm certainly not open to hearing your far-fetched interpretation of what a spiritual awakening is. Besides, my family has been Jewish or Mormon or Christian or Catholic or Muslim or Buddhist or Hindu for centuries. And I'm certain we are the ones that know the truth about spirituality. So stop trying to cram your religious viewpoints down my throat, John. It's just a waste of your time." May I answer this impolite person with dignity by saying, this subject matter is not religious based at all. Let me repeat that. This subject matter is not faith-based or religious-based at all. And it's geared toward those that are interested in expanding their knowledge of the universe, mastering the inner self, and understanding the intricacies of a truly spiritual mind, particularly how it relates to a divine connection with 1, the all, 2, the I am, 3, the Holy Spirit, as a Christian would call it, 4, the great high God, as a Taoist would call it, or even 5, the Great Spirit, as an American Indian might put it. Okay, so this is an interdenominational, non-denominational, and non-religious presentation surrounding your spiritual awakening. So don't try to box it into a formalized doctrine or religion, because it's not. If after all I've said is not enough, and your viewpoint is too inflexible to appreciate this content and potentially enjoy a fresh spiritual start in life, then again, I say respectfully, it's better just to delete the download now, because I'll never get through to your puny thinking anyway. I'd like to also be so bold as to say, if you listen to the internal prompting that is leading you toward the journey of a spiritual awakening, your life will be transformed into something meaningful and significant. However, if you refuse that call, your life will be like an empty tomb or a living hell. As a word of caution, parts of this presentation might seem rather scary to some people with weak hearts or a fear of the spiritually unknown. So if that is you, I'd suggest to proceed with extreme caution, because I wouldn't want to be responsible for any nervous breakdowns from this subject matter. So, if you're still listening, I'll give you a brief overview of my personal experience undergoing something called the dark night of the soul, which led me to an accelerated spiritual awakening. And by accelerated, it doesn't mean very rapid, and I'll explain that in a minute. I'll also try to touch on how I became less interested in the inflexible, closed-minded viewpoints of American religiosity. Needless to say, but I'll say it anyway, that a spiritual awakening is far from a smooth or enjoyable encounter. In fact, it is usually filled with troubling thoughts and a very discomforting overall experience. If you are mentally strong enough to endure it, however, you'll come out on the other side much better and as a totally new and improved version of yourself. That's right. Regarding my journey, some of the most difficult times started with the loss of my second son. He was just 28, and this hit me very hard. Equally difficult just after that, I lost my second wife after only 5 years. On top of that, 6 months afterwards, my little dog, who was my best friend for over 10 years, she died from old age. That's her picture right there. Anyway, this triple whammy pummeled me with both tears and sadness that I can't even begin to explain. So I began seeking reasons and explanations that no church or spiritual leader could provide. Just like what I personally went through. Almost every time someone begins a spiritual awakening, it is triggered by big life changes. Sometimes mental breakdowns or traumatic family situations. To sum it all up, and maybe even doubts in your mind, the primary reason why you have a spiritual awakening is simple. The universe and life itself decided you were ready to finally wake up and begin a meaningful spiritual journey. In a word, spiritual awakenings are the soul's cry for freedom and renewal. Although the beginning stages of this awakening can be somewhat unnerving, there can also be a certain element of wonder and excitement when we find ourselves suddenly feeling very much awake and alive within our souls. To further explain my experience after over 3 decades believing in the highly judgmental teaching of the Christian church and continually being presented with the heaven versus hell and sin arguments, I became very disillusioned by it all. Although I haven't lost faith in Jesus or the Holy Spirit, I've discovered there is much more to true spirituality than reading the Bible, being led in prayer, or attending church. The funny thing is that I was single for most of those 3 decades in the church, an unmarried single father actually, and almost everyone around me was married. It was when I was in the midst of those large congregations that I felt deeply alone and without real friends, or let's say without spiritual soulmates that cared about me and didn't have any hidden agendas at the same time. In essence, I had no true friends to confide in, and my family didn't understand my predicament either. Rather, didn't want to because of their own lack of spirituality. Therefore, I began looking for answers and feel that the mighty Spirit led me to discover what a true awakening was all about. And I'm going to talk about myths associated with a true spiritual awakening. And let me tell you, it's probably not what you've heard of or what you believe in. So please give me a moment to get there. Okay, so please allow me to give just a few examples of spiritually awakened people, regardless of any religious affiliation or lack thereof. When I think of spiritually awakened people, names like Gandhi, Mother Teresa, the original Buddha, and Jesus come to mind. I also think of Confucius, Mother Teresa, Dr. Billy Graham, Albert Einstein, and even Nikola Tesla. Incidentally, Tesla believed that electrical currents were actually a form of a spiritual entity, and that the universe directly taught him about how to manipulate those electrical currents. Anyway, these inspired figures might lead you to believe that being spiritually awakened is akin to being holy, wealthy, or even famous. If so, think again. Always understand that, except in the case of Jesus or maybe the original Buddha, these individuals are all examples of people who were simultaneously flawed in some way. But of course, we're continually striving to live an ethical life with focus on the greater good of mankind. As I mentioned earlier, I personally underwent a spiritual awakening process that occurred as a result of the loss of several people within a short period of time in my life. What I didn't share was an interesting phenomena that happened in conjunction with this experience, and one of the key steps of becoming awakened. Experts on this subject call this phenomena the dark night of the soul. To further explain, the dark night of the soul, leading to a true spiritual awakening, is a period in life when we feel completely cut off from God or the divine entity, the great all. Some might say that the more aware you become of your disconnect with the divine or with God, the more chances you are experiencing a dark night of the soul. So, going through a dark night of the soul is profoundly entwined with the process of a spiritual awakening. As the biblical King David said, before he was safe and secure, he had to walk through the valley of the shadow of death. What I believe this means is that in order to prepare his heart, your heart, my heart for any future conquests, we need to experience tough times, possibly danger, and a true development of our courage and spirituality. As a modern day analogy, think of the proverb that says, "The old must be stripped away in order to make way for the new." This means that the suffering you experience during the dark night of the soul is for a purpose. And this process is similar to the destruction of the old ways, such as outdated beliefs, identities, or habits, in order to pave the way for fresh beginnings. To reiterate, the dark night of the soul is not a pretty or smooth experience. At its core, it's raw, rough, and perhaps the most difficult experience you will ever experience. Most everything is ripped away from you. There is no true clarity and no peace. Please know, however, that it is only a stage in the awakening process, the journey, okay? And like everything in life, it will naturally fade away. So hang in there. Signs you might be experiencing a dark night of the soul, along with the beginning of your awakening, include some of the following. You feel isolated from everything, other people, career, and life in general. You feel abandoned by God or the divine being. Your mood is usually low vibration, unhappy, or depressed. You're spiritually lost and you don't know which direction to go. You feel a sense of dread, depression, or impending doom when observing the world. You lack the motivation to do what you are accustomed to and have a deep tiredness or fatigue. You keep pondering the profound questions of life. For example, why am I here? What is the meaning of life? You feel like you don't belong in this day and age and that you should have been born in a past era, like the 1950s, for example. Obviously, most of these dark night symptoms are rather uncomfortable, but always remember it is the darkest just before the dawn. So before I dive even further into what a spiritual awakening is, let's dispel 3 myths or falsehoods about what it is not. I mentioned this in the beginning. Okay, there's a lot of misconceptions. So, myth number 1, a spiritual awakening can occur quickly as a result of a profound event in life. This is not true. You do not become spiritually awakened until the 5th and final chapter of the journey, and I will explain that at the end of this video. So please be so kind as to listen on and don't miss any of this. It's extremely important. You have been appointed to watch this, so listen carefully. Okay, if and when you finally get to that 5th level or that 5th chapter of your spirituality, it will be where you actually enter enlightenment. Therefore, as you spiritually awaken and go through this long process, it's again important to remember that you do not become instantly enlightened. And it never happens fast, my friend. Here's another myth that you'll hear. You hear nonsense thrown around all the time by various forms of media, or let's say announcers and podcasters in the media, about an all of a sudden enlightenment. For example, you may hear a short video of a 30-something man that says, wow, when that happened, I experienced my spiritual awakening. Be very cautious if you hear this, because it's fake and overly dramatized. Nothing, I say, can be farther from the truth. Again, it's never instantaneous. Here's another myth. Let's call this myth number 2B. It's a falsehood that says the journey of being spiritually awakened means continually experiencing divine love, light, and bliss or happiness. This is not true either. Yes, we might go through periods of love, light, and emotional happiness, which should be the norm during the journey. But these experiences are usually temporary and are like the ebb and flow of a wave. It's unrealistic to expect ourselves to only experience the same kind of awakened state, such as a high vibration, love, and light-filled stage or state, right? That's unrealistic because we are not angels or heavenly bodies yet. Instead, we are multifaceted human beings with roots firmly planted in this physical world. And that's not to say that you won't eventually spend the majority of your waking hours in the high energy vibration of spirituality and filled with illuminated light and love. However, that is not continually ongoing, particularly in the first 3 chapters. Again, I'll explain those chapters later toward the end of this video, particularly in the first 3 or maybe 4 chapters of the awakening journey. Okay, myth number 3. This is a repeat of the first myth, only said in a slightly different way. Remember, a spiritual awakening is never a brief one-time event leading to the heavenly nirvana of enlightenment. It's been taught by true master teachers for decades, which incidentally are the humans that I'll later review when I discuss the 4th chapter of the awakening. These master teachers say that only a rare few yogis and Buddhist master teachers ever arrive at true enlightenment, which is almost a godlike state of being. Okay, let me repeat that. These master teachers instruct us that only a few yogis or Buddhist master teachers, you can even add Hindu teachers in that list, or Taoist, many other of the Eastern spiritual faiths, okay? These masters teach that very few yogis or, let's say, gurus ever arrive at true enlightenment, okay, which is almost a godlike state of being. Maybe one modern day example of a truly enlightened being is the Dalai Lama. And coming in a distant second could be a visionary futurist like Elon Musk. Additionally, I'd like to reiterate, and I'm sorry to be so repetitive, but this is super important. There is a very widespread false teaching online and in other places, such as small spiritual communities, and you must understand that a spiritual awakening and the metaphysical journey to become enlightened is a very slow process, even leading well into old age. So let me repeat that also. In all honesty, almost nobody has the guts and spiritual endurance to arrive at this chapter, this 5th and final chapter, and the heavenly nirvana of enlightenment for the faithful. This usually occurs at the time of death. That's not to say you cannot live the vast majority of your days and nights as an extremely spiritual, intuitive, and light-filled being on this earth. The concept of the spiritual awakening has been around for centuries and can be observed in a variety of cultures and religions throughout the world. It can be called nirvana, enlightenment, or even spiritual bliss. Although it's most closely associated with Buddhism, Taoism, you can see it also intertwined in Hinduism, Christianity, and Shintoism, also Taoism, let's say. Regardless of its religious or non-religious connection, remember, going through a spiritual awakening is one of the most confusing, lonely, alienating, yet supremely beautiful experiences in life. I know it was for me. Without experiencing a spiritual awakening, we go throughout life pursuing the emptiness of money, fame, sex, power, or needing to be respected, all done in a fruitless attempt to find happiness. Someone just said, "Give me a break, John. You want me to believe that being an enlightened guru is better than great sex, wide recognition, or having great financial resources to spend on whatever I want? What kind of freak are you, John? This is all a bunch of spiritual mumbo jumbo. Get your head out of the clouds, John, because I live in a place called planet Earth." Well, may I gently reply to that unkind noise by saying, I don't want you to believe anything, okay? I'm not trying to convince you about any kind of religious doctrine. And again, this is not a religious guru type teaching that tries convincing you to convert to Buddhism or some other kind of faith. My goal in this presentation is to help those that seek guidance, not people that pridefully think they have already mastered life. It's been my personal experience, and I've spoken to thousands in spiritual subject matter, that if you are one of the many that think you have mastered life and cannot be taught anything, then you are one of the many truly unspiritual people living in a self-centered, narcissistic mentality. And I say that with sadness for you. Here's a key. Should you be humble enough to still be listening? The hidden gift buried deep within the spiritual awakening is that they occur at the precise time that you need them the most. If you're one of the few that have experienced a spiritual awakening already, and you're in that fourth chapter that I'm about to describe, you have come to see through the lies and illusions of this world. Okay, deep in your soul, you realize that nothing external, such as money or recognition, has ever, nor will ever, bring you true happiness or fulfillment. This profound realization leaves you craving for something richer and more fulfilling, something that will make you feel truly whole from the inside out. Okay, once we understand and truly feel who we are goes far beyond what we can see with our eyes, we can then begin to drop the ego issues we have. And this allows you to return to your better form. Okay, let's say our true spiritual nature and illuminated self. It's at that point where we taste the true and profound peace, love, and freedom that we have secretly wanted all along, but have misguidedly sought in the material world and the realm of overanalyzing. Having said that, now let's delve into what a spiritual awakening consists of. I'll first talk about the signs and symptoms so that you know you are in the midst of one. Then lastly, I'll review an accurate analysis of the stages involved in the actual awakening. First, the mental and physical signs or symptoms of an awakening. And let me again say, they may be uncomfortable to go through. And they may also differ from person to person, but generally speaking, this is what happens. An amplification of your senses. For example, lights are more harsh, sight becomes more clear, hearing is intensified to where you are hypersensitive to loud sounds. Maybe even your sense of smell becomes intensified, even noticing distant odors or fragrances. Changes in sleep patterns. For example, you sleep more or experience more disrupted sleep, even insomnia. Vivid dreams, where they become very realistic, bizarre, or even frightening. Dizziness, or feeling lightheaded as a result of being somewhat confused. Weight change, either gaining or losing a moderate amount of weight. Changes in eating habits. What you once liked eating no longer appeals to you. You'll begin to crave live, raw foods, mainly fruits and vegetables. Fluctuations in energy, feeling less energized than you used to. Decreased sex drive and decreased desire for smoking or alcohol. Immunodeficiency, okay, and that means being more prone to colds and flus. Your system is run down. It's unlikely you'll experience all these physical symptoms associated with an awakening, but it's not uncommon to experience 3 or 4 of them. Furthermore, if no logical reason can be found, such as in the examples of changes in weight or sleep patterns, it's imperative to understand that there is something metaphysical going on. Okay, now those were just emotional or physical symptoms. Now let's talk more about the mind. We will discuss several mental signals and spiritual indicators that you are in the midst of a spiritual awakening. First, you feel as though your life is unreal or false. Everything that you've believed and worked towards seems phony. Your life doesn't feel as though it's your own, or you no longer feel like yourself. Nearly everything you once enjoyed no longer brings you meaning or satisfaction. Examples are sex, pursuit of money, or drinking fine wine. Lastly, you have a deep sense that the societal norms taught to you from your youth have all been a lie. For example, to be a good citizen, you must politically vote. This ties into your craving for meaning and purpose in life. You deeply desire to find the meaning of your life. You have no idea what your purpose is, but you want to find it desperately. There's a sense that something is missing inside you, almost like part of your soul is lost or misplaced. A spiritual awakening will likely cause you to reevaluate your spirituality and belief system, even adopt significant new ones. Whether that means connecting deeply with a new religion, such as Buddhism or Christianity, or adopting a lifestyle of becoming more of a spiritual person compared to an earthly or worldly materialist. Again, you begin asking deep questions like, why am I here on this earth? What's the purpose of life? Is there really an afterlife or a heaven? You begin thinking more philosophically. Such profound thoughts may greatly disturb you as you don't know where to find the answers. Additionally, you might begin asking other profound questions, such as, why do I bother drinking alcohol? Why do I feel the need to compare myself with others? Or maybe, do I really need to eat so much animal meat? You realize much of what you've been taught is a lie, an illusion, or a half-truth. You start to see how many beliefs, feelings, and values taught to you are not the actual truth, but have been downloaded to you based on the beliefs of others, okay, or what society has subconsciously pushed into your precious head. For example, you realize the pursuit of money or romantic, even sexual relationships as a source of happiness is only a half-truth. Materialism, success, and sexual gratification no longer mean much to you. You start feeling as though you are a cog in the machine of society, and it's all a big facade. You feel very lost and alone, even around others. Nothing in your life seems to make sense anymore. You feel as though you've wandered, as though you're wandering through the wilderness like a directionless lone wolf. You feel completely alone and cut off from most everyone else, even if you're in a room filled with people. You struggle but fail to relate to those you once felt close to. For example, friends or family members. You will also develop a deeper sense of discerning, okay? That means intuitively understanding the character of those around you. This means you can sense inauthenticity and manipulation, almost using a sixth sense, let's say. For example, if someone's trying to deceive you, you'll therefore retreat from this group of people and choose solitude rather than inauthentic social interaction. So you rather, let's say, prefer solitude and to be alone, whereas you may have been extroverted, now you experience the introverted side of your nature. You spend a lot of your time introspecting and enjoying the silence. As much as possible, you try to reduce social contact and social media while increasing your time alone outdoors and in nature. You may feel like your loved ones don't understand you anymore because you are changing. You may have even been excited about your new spiritual awareness and told family or friends, but they rejected it and told you to keep your religion to yourself. When you tried to explain it's not a religion, it's an experience, they got angry, which further drives you into isolation. Another spiritual symptom is that you want to purge or totally reorganize your life. You're sick and tired of feeling stranded, depressed, and hopeless. Suddenly you feel the need to simplify become a minimalist and declutter your life. This is both an external and internal purification process. It could mean cutting ties with toxic people, such as a bad relationship where you have to continually give a second, third, and 23rd chance to someone else. It can mean donating old things, relocating to a new job or a new home, maybe even a distant city, or even giving away much of what you previously thought as valuable. Connected to this topic is that you become fed up with your career and want to quit and maybe just start something new. Even though you worked for years, getting your degree, establishing your career, and climbing the corporate ranks, you feel nothing but emptiness. Your job no longer provides you with any sense of fulfillment, and you desperately crave for something different and more meaningful. Additionally, you desire to be more integrated with nature, okay? And that desire will grow as you seek to start something new, maybe an outdoor job, for example, okay? And also a deep desire to go on nature walks or hiking in the forest will be one of the manifestations of this. You also begin experiencing deep empathy and compassion as you start paying more attention to the many hardships faced by humanity and nature alike. You'll develop more compassion in general. Your inherent empathy is awakened, and instead of judging those you previously did not like, you end up feeling sorry for them and their mental state. You also want to leave the world a better place. You start thinking how you can be part of something bigger than just yourself. This longing to make a real impact translates to actively helping others or finding a true life purpose. This also means you'll feel called to be of service, whether to people, to animals, or to the natural world, let's say nature or the environment. It's important to you that you have a cause you can support in order to feel a deeper sense of purpose. This can include volunteering at your local food bank, or maybe even secretly shoveling snow off your elderly neighbor's driveway before they leave, unbeknownst to them. Most conversations seem shallow to you. When you do talk to people, you feel an acute sense of separation. You realize that very few people are comfortable with talking about deep and meaningful topics. You therefore can't stand simple-minded small talk about the weather, politics, or money. In conversations, you feel restless and irritated by the subject matter of this material world. You silently scream, "Can't anyone wake up and discuss the meaning of life or their journey with spirituality?" Your distaste for frivolous chit-chat draws you more into solitude. You may become a loner or a rebellious free spirit. You become painfully aware of unproductive and old negative habits. You are awakened to your flaws and destructive habits. Okay, within you arises a strong urge to wipe the slate clean and start over. You have a sense of your past low vibration life of being critical or selfish and long for a high vibrational spirituality. You also become awakened to the frivolity and uselessness of drug and alcohol intake. As you continue along this path, you mystically begin educating yourself on the difference between a high vibration mentality of oneness with the universal spirit compared to the low vibration mindset of seeking fleshed out pleasure, such as getting high, getting laid, or getting drunk. Incidentally, the great universal spirit, the all, the I am, you could even call it, does not hear the cries, hopes, or dreams of someone that's involved in this low energy, low vibration life, such as the intake of drugs, sucking in cigarettes, marijuana, or drinking alcohol. Interestingly, while you are becoming enlightened to these old negative habits, if you were a drinker of wine in the past, for example, even a sip of it or the smell of it will begin to make you nauseous. Same holds true if you walk into a room of folks smoking cigarettes or weed. You feel sick and look for ways to immediately leave the environment. You also experience periodic anxiety or depression. Sadly, this means you may go through bouts of depression, mental instability, or persistent anxiety. You also might be misdiagnosed with a mental illness. Uncertainty and fear follow you around everywhere. Similar, yet slightly different, is that you may have unwanted physical symptoms. For example, part of your awakening may include sadness, anxiety, fatigue, or even confusion, all of which will pass as you travel deeper and deeper into your new spirituality. As I mentioned before, but just to repeat, because this is important, don't be alarmed if your senses become more heightened. Your 5 senses will often become enhanced during spiritual awakenings as you become more mindful of the present moment. This includes heightened sensitivity to physical touch, emotional feelings, hearing sounds you are not used to, or tapping into stimuli from external energy fields. Along with your 5 senses, your 6th sense of intuition awakens. Gradually, you begin to listen to the still, small voice within your soul. You allow your innermost being to guide your decisions, and you become more receptive to the messages of the subconscious mind. These messages can come as a result of dreams, auditory sensations, or practices like journaling and meditation. You may even come in contact with your spirit guides or personal angel. Your daydreams and night dreams start to become more vivid. Not only is your waking life more vivid as a result of a spiritual awakening, but your dream life at night becomes more realistic too. Some folks might call this lucid dreaming. This means, the meaning of your dreams and how they connect to your spiritual journey will manifest as a revelation because you start to connect them with their hidden meanings and how you should move forward. Remember, I said hidden meanings. So, as a word of caution here, listen carefully. There is rarely a direct meaning for meaning correlation of your actual dream activity to real life. For example, jumping off a mountain in your dream does not mean suicide in real life. So don't think of it that way. Rather, it may mean that it's time to break free of old habits, such as a sedentary life, and jump into a serious physical fitness program. Likewise, if you have a fist fight with someone in your dream and beat the living daylights out of them, that does not mean it's time to go around beating up people when you wake up. Rather, it may indeed be interpreted as being more assertive at work and not allowing others to walk all over you when your ideas are presented or are criticized by others. So remember, there is rarely a one-to-one correlation between actual dream events and how you should act upon those in the waking hours. I don't want to see anyone hurt themselves or hurt others through misinterpretations. Okay, now that we've clarified that, here is another sign to think about. You start experiencing what they call synchronicity. This is a phenomenon where you keep seeing the same repeated numbers, colors, words, or images all the time. This refers to deeply meaningful coincidences which mysteriously occur in your life in a ongoing or repetitious manner, let's say. It's almost like an extremely profound correlation between the things people say, the colors or the shapes you see, or an idea that keeps popping up in your mind or through conversation. When you experience synchronicity, you'll have experiences that seem far too significant to be mere day-to-day serendipitous encounters. Some people describe these as freak encounters, miracles, or even signs from the heavens. You start becoming conscious of the signs and omens that life brings to you. Living day to day flows from just a material world event to a spiritual journey, as many situations, events, or wishes begin to show up again and again to interact with you. You may even undergo various mystical experiences, such as feeling you're in a different city, speaking to an unknown family member, or enjoying a newly found spot in nature that gives you the impression you've been there several times before. Kind of like the deja vu effect. Another signal that you're in the middle of a spiritual awakening is that you feel more wonder, joy, and curiosity. So this is one of the pleasures mixed in with the pain of your spiritual awakening. For example, the smallest things start to bring you joy and bliss. A falling leaf, okay, a dog's wagging tail, a child's laughter, or even an evergreen tree. Life is no longer boring. It is seen as magical, amazing, and beautiful. You lose interest in drama with others, the hunger for money, or anything that perpetuates criticism or hatred. For example, you lose interest in watching the news. Lastly, you will have a childlike wonder and curiosity for the world around you, and may even begin a serious study of plants or wildlife, such as wild birds of prey, possibly beginning a study of the cosmos and buying a telescope for stargazing. You begin to understand that we are all one and interconnected. As your awakening process matures, you begin to integrate with the understanding that who you truly are is connected to the collective consciousness of everyone else. You see that we are all one and that we are all expressions of the same divine spirit. Also, that we have never been separate or separated from other ethnicities or even cultures and distant countries. Biases and criticisms of others, such as racism, begin to wash away as you learn about the law of entanglement. I'll let you look up this metaphysical law of an entangled energy on your own because it takes quite a while to fully explain it. Also, you start letting go of fixed identities or attachments. Attachments are how you define yourself, right? How we defined ourselves. You may define yourself by the car you drive, your fashion choices, the shoes you wear, what foods you like to eat. I'm a vegan, for example, you may say. What you spend your free time doing, your political party. I'm a Republican, you might say. Or you may identify with either how you spend or save your money. As another example, over your lifetime, you have internalized beliefs or descriptions about who you are or what your family, friends, the media, or even society has taught you. As you move into your spiritual awakening, these identities and attachments become more obvious to you as frivolous veils or deceptions that should be greatly adjusted or entirely stripped away. Some fixed identities can even be affirmations you have chanted to yourself but are now reconsidering, such as, I am intelligent, I am popular, I am a dog lover, I am a meat lover, I am sexy, or even I am a generous Christian. The point here is that every attachment or identity is a layer to the thin fabric that you once thought was your true self. Once you become aware of the layered veil, it becomes more transparent and obvious that you're far more than a preconceived identity. You begin to see right through this facade and start to reevaluate who you are in light of new spirituality and mindfulness, working hand in hand with letting go of attachments, is that you start removing any fears you currently have, such as the fear of death. Most all fears decrease as an individual becomes more awakened or enlightened, from fear of certain personality types to fear of certain places, like the wilderness, all the way to the point of losing a fear of passing away. And this is primarily due to a newfound lack of attachment. So, your own demise seems less tragic when you focus on living in the present and stop worrying so much about the future. You may even stop worrying or feeling guilt over past sins or mistakes. When you realize that you're part of the divine universal spirit and that your destiny is not accidental, but is part of a great master plan to benefit your life, then the loss of this physical body feels less tragic. Understanding that allows for a much higher level of peace and removal of fear. Okay, so now that we've discussed the signs and symptoms of your spiritual awakening, as promised, we'll now review some stages of the process, not the chapters yet. That's going to be the grand finale, but stages, okay? Regarding the process of a spiritual journey, which are rather complex. Keep in mind these are fluid stages that don't necessarily fit into neatly organized categories, and some of them may even overlap with what I've previously mentioned. Therefore, if an element or stage of this section sounds slightly familiar, consider it an important topic or reminder, or maybe a topic related to synchronicity, if you remember that. So, some of these key stages are: first, you begin finding answers and experiencing breakthroughs. After a lot of soul searching, you begin finding teachers like an online master guru, or practices like mindfulness and meditation, even belief systems such as Buddhism or Hinduism that ease your existential suffering. This can be very beneficial to a true awakening. During this state, let's say, you feel a sense of breakthrough as old patterns dissolve and your true nature begins to emerge. You may have several mystical experiences or brief moments of enlightenment that give you a glimpse into the previously hidden nature of reality. This is a time of joy, hope, connection, and awe regarding the spiritual world. Beware, however, not to use the crutch of spiritual bypassing during this stage. To spiritually bypass is to use spirituality or religiosity to avoid or escape from uncomfortable issues or areas within life. These issues could be the loss of a loved one, a relationship breakup, career problems, childhood abuse, loneliness, mental or emotional health issues, or any other situation you're encountering. Do not spiritually bypass. Spiritually awaken. Okay, so that means this stage should not include bypassing the harsh times of your current life in order to escape into mentalism or half-hearted awakenings, because reality will set in again and no awakening will occur at all. Another interesting stage, regardless of past progress in your spiritual journey, is that disillusionment and feeling lost may again show up in your life as an ebb and flow, a wave going up and down. This is the down part. In this stage, you may become bored and tired of your spiritual teachers, such as that previously mentioned online guru, or practices such as chanting a mantra over and over. You may become disillusioned by the fake spiritual propaganda out there, like YouTube videos surrounding how to attract money, or you crave for something deeper, let's say. You may even experience long periods of connection with the divine, only to be apparently separated through a disconnection. And this is normal and will pass with consistency. Understandably, you'll feel disturbed and deeply upset by this experience. Additionally, while you may have experienced many emotional or spiritual breakthroughs, they might feel superficial also. You might end up craving further validation and authenticity for your awakening. The unhappiness and stagnation you feel will motivate you to inherently search for a path that resonates better with your soul. Also, within this stage, you're not interested in dabbling in feel-good spiritual philosophies anymore. The abiding pain you feel inside motivates you to go deep inside, let's say to do deep inner work, okay, within your soul to find a better pathway. For example, you may become a serious student of meditation, mindfulness, stoicism, or even understanding how to conquer your inner shadow. Incidentally, I produced an entire YouTube video program on this exact subject called The Darkness Within You. Lastly comes the stage of integration and spiritual expansion. Integration means taking the spiritual lessons you've learned from your inner soul work and applying them to your daily life. Okay, we always talk about application in anything regarding spirituality. We always want to apply them for our benefit and the benefit of those around us. Integration happens both consciously and subconsciously. In this stage, you'll experience the most profound and long-lasting changes deep within. Many people experience prolonged mystical encounters and periods of unity with the divine in this expansion and integration phase. Let me repeat that. Many people experience prolonged mystical encounters and periods of unity with the divine or God in this expansion and integration stage or phase. Remember that enlightenment or full self-realization is never guaranteed, and most will never truly reach that level of enlightenment. However, we must strive for it. Ultimately, it becomes the universal gift of the divine being. Nevertheless, profound peace and joy emerge and are felt in this stage. You may feel ready to be a spiritual leader, helper, teacher, and pass on your insight to others, such as what I'm doing here with this video. Life will become less about you and more about we, okay, or the collective consciousness of the world. Above all else, you will feel connected, at peace with yourself, and deeply aligned with the meaning of life as it applies specifically to you and your interactions with others. Please note that it is common to move back and forth between these spiritual awakening stages or phases. Remember that this is not a linear or textbook type process. You do not necessarily move from breakthrough to disillusionment to integration in that order. This is a complex and ever fluid path. Therefore, keep in mind it's perfectly fine if your personal situation is different than what I've described. Your spiritual awakening process is unique to you. Lastly, working hand in hand with the stages I just mentioned is something I like to call chapters of the awakening process. Some of these may combine with previous signs and symptoms, but nonetheless are important to unravel further so that you can get a complete understanding of this amazing yet daunting spiritual awakening experience. Okay, this is the long-awaited section I mentioned a couple times, and we're going to discuss these as growth stages from childhood to adulthood and wise old age. Chapter 1, the spiritual awakening of a child. In this first chapter, we sense a vital dimension missing from our materialistic existence. A longing emerges to experience our unique higher purpose. For example, you realize worldly pursuits like money, romance, and fame cannot satisfy the soul's longing for more. This crucially important shift questions the absolute truth of egocentric values assimilated from society. Spiritual awareness displaces the previous certainty surrounding material goals. During this ever-seeking spiritual chapter, we may dabble in techniques and sensory systems that fail to produce real transformation. Actual progress in this journey requires brutal self-honesty and humility. The self-seeking chapter signifies your consciousness moving toward illumination, yet it's fleeting. Keep in mind, however, that spiritual ambition can distract from true spirituality. We may risk becoming lost in idealizing gurus and collecting mystical experiences and beliefs. But any so-called acquired knowledge does not translate into an actual awakening. What is more useful than losing yourself in mysticism or a particular guru's teaching is to choose a proven tradition with emphasis on directly realizing spiritual truths such as mindfulness, meditation, and listening to your inner voice or intuition. In this first chapter, it's important to focus your time and effort on common sense spirituality, even a recognized spiritual community, such as a conservative Buddhist group that nurtures inner work, and to avoid videos, teachings, or groups within a religious community that encourage loud group chanting, fanaticism, or overboard spiritual practices such as the Pentecostal version of speaking in strange tongues, or other practices such as calling out to the dead, even praying to the dead. Unfortunately, during this first chapter, old thought patterns will still dominate your mind, such as the pursuit of money, recognition in your career, or validation in love relationships. Therefore, you must diligently cultivate the higher human potentials of wisdom, compassion, and generosity, while at the same time dismantling prejudice, political bias, and dogma. What becomes ultimately useful is retreating into silence through meditation, a practice that creates space for inner wisdom to unfold organically while false identities dissolve. Chapter 2, the spiritual awakened teenager. You are now becoming or beginning to notice more maturity in your spirituality, some of which occurs spontaneously, but most of which through the long-term spiritual traditional practices taught to you by foundational leaders that have guided you into areas such as meditation or prayer and mindful perception. although you have breakthroughs in this second teenage level chapter regarding luminosity, spiritual bliss, and hints of other dimensions and spiritual beings like angels, most of the time this is just a fleeting glimpse that quickly fades as you struggle to make sense of it in your logical human way. This is a crucial stage that is both uncomfortable and rigorous. You therefore must stay on path using what you know surrounding meditation, indirect laws of attraction, and continual realization of karma. Though difficult, you continue to understand that life can be a miraculous, light-filled dream that is both physical and metaphysical. You may fall into dream-like states during meditation and experience moments of blissful illusion where you see and feel everything as interconnected energy. Of course, this collective energy experience will defy your intellectual grasp, as the human mind always tries to make sense of spiritual things in other dimensions. In essence, your subconscious thinking will degrade a fourth or fifth dimension experience down to a third dimension human explanation, which further causes mental confusion from these waves of back and forth rationality. The good thing is that if you are truly on your right spiritual path, your deepest intuition will both confirm and affirm that this path toward being a light-filled being is indeed the truth and well worth the effort. As you internalize this truth, your mind becomes stabilized with the realization that you are part of an infinite belonging and universal divine love. Loneliness and needing a recognized identity will float away slowly and be replaced with relaxation and understanding that your existence is more metaphysical and spiritual rather than the old three-dimensional striving for money, success, sex, or acceptance. Adjusting to this radical shift from external attachments to divine oneness is profoundly destabilizing and can be taxing in a physiological sense. So as you can see, this second chapter as a teenage adolescent on your spiritual journey is composed of ups and downs, ebbs and flows down your spiritual path as you learn and relearn the best methods of mindfulness, meditations, and practices of humility, compassion, devotion, and intuition. Okay, chapter 3, the college-aged spiritualist. Again, the term college-aged is an allegory here, if you remember from the beginning of this section. For example, a college-aged spiritualist can be 45 years old, which actually is about right in the grand scheme of things if you've been practicing this for 8 or 10 years. This chapter signals the beginning of the final push toward adulthood and eventually the wise, old, enlightened spiritualist. And you are experiencing in this chapter more clarity and intuition. You're using your sixth sense, and even heavenly signs are experienced during meditation. Unfortunately, it's still fleeting and part of what I previously mentioned about an ebb and flow, an up and a down. You will ride times of ego dissolution, then reinvention of the ego. You understand that your ego, arrogance, and striving for materialism are all aspects you need to rid yourself of, yet they occasionally rear their ugly heads back into existence. Therefore, you feel tossed between divinity and the delusion of a worldly human being. This confusing cycle results from ignorance still lurking within your persona. Profound spiritual experiences soon give way to the humanity of everyday life. Yet you continue to seek and find more meaningful existence and have a meditative mindset. You may be experiencing increasing times of intuition and clarity, sometimes the interpretation of very vivid dreams. This in turn leads to enhanced creativity as you start to become a seer, viewing situations far past what is in the present. Some people might call that becoming a visionary. Okay, all of this occurs while you actively create your future through various spiritual laws and practices. Okay, you embrace living in a high vibrational state and become a quasi-visionary with a focus on healing others going through difficult emotional issues. You are also doing your best during this spiritual chapter to maintain regularity in mindfulness, detachment from the world, and of course meditation. But occasionally you realize disbelief and fear that things are not going as planned. Despite these stumbling blocks in your spiritual path, your divine essence remains untouched and slowly grows stronger. At times you miss the past formal life of seeking riches, fame, honor, and success in the physical and material world. You may also feel that you are sometimes forced to be part of the secular society, subconsciously yearning for a heavenly metaphysical body and mind. Regardless of grieving these physical world losses, calmness and mindfulness strengthens your character and you push forward. Be cautious during this chapter, because if you are careless and fall back into worldly desires and material goals, all previous gains of clarity, intuition, and divine connection can indeed be forfeited. Okay, let me repeat that. Be cautious during this chapter, because if you carelessly fall back into worldly desires or material goals, all previous gains of clarity, divine connection, and intuition can indeed be forfeited, thereby throwing you backwards to a previous chapter, maybe even back to the childhood chapter. Because of that, it is of the utmost importance to remain steadfast through the non-forced and natural repetition of sustained, intensive spiritual practices. Connecting to the divine consciousness through deep visualization and meditation is one example of doing that. As you're finishing this college-like chapter and prepare for adulthood in your awakening journey, your innermost being is starting to get a taste of being able to discern emotional issues that others are going through. even if they do not personally tell you anything about what they're going through. This also means you are developing a highly synchronized awareness of both the physical and spiritual world around you. Unfortunately, this material world's default chatter creeps back into your thinking, and this back and forth experience continues. You're torn between making money, pleasing others, or pursuing respect rather than what you begin to realize in the latter 2 chapters of your awakening that I'm about to mention. Lastly, you will discover through dedicated spiritual training that you can increasingly disempower the unproductive neural circuitries of greed, negativity, and obsessive passions such as the constant pursuit of sex, money, or pleasure. Okay, chapter 4, the adulthood of your spiritual awakening. In this chapter of your journey, you start noticing your growing ability to resonate energetically with the vibration of others. Occasionally, you will be given power to provide superficial, physical, and spiritual healing to others. Although this healing is not yet at a profound level, nonetheless, it will be of benefit to others that do not completely understand how much they need it at the time. Worldly vices such as smoking, drugging, and drinking are now a thing of the past for you. As your understanding of the divine universe grows and any taste is removed concerning addictions to drinks and other substances that the government uses to control the population. That's right, I just said the government uses alcohol, tobacco, marijuana, other drugs, even food additives to control population levels. And you can take that to the bank, my friend. In this adulthood chapter, you now realize the connection you have with all living beings, whether human or animal, and gently strive to collapse all divisions and biases you previously had. This also means that you experience no separation between the 2 worlds of physical matter and the spirit. Okay, you are living in both, let's say, simultaneously. Your egocentric identity is replaced by profound humility and acceptance of your current existence. Trying to control or manipulate each situation in life is now a notion that resides in your distant past. Similarly, the concept of selfishness is almost completely removed from your psyche. If you were to undergo a neurological examination during this chapter of your awakening, your illuminated intuition shows up as an EEG activity report being both highly organized and synchronized throughout the brain. Despite this phenomenal progress in your journey, a full spiritual awakening and enlightenment has not fully occurred yet, because you retain somewhat important human capacities for creative wage earning, pleasures, and even humor. You do, however, experience a regular and natural state of joy, service to others, and gratitude with every waking moment. You are so grateful and thankful for your existence. Vivid, realistic dreams permeate your sleeping hours, and you receive intuitive, divine messages. These lucid dreams are translatable into benefiting the world around you, especially during your physical world interactions. So to reiterate, lucid dreams and their interpretations will manifest. Metaphysical journeys to and from distant worlds are beginning to happen. You may even be given the divine gift of being able to converse with beings of light that will provide insight while you're dreaming into the meaning of life and how to conduct ongoing luminous work on Earth. Incidentally, after 20 years, in January of 2024, I'm now in the middle of this 4th chapter of a true spiritual awakening. As I mentioned in the beginning of this video, it takes many years to get to this final chapter that I'm about to explain. Chapter 5. The final chapter, the wise old enlightened spiritualist. Only a rare few dedicated and chosen people ever get to this final glorious stage. Okay, it in essence is the last stage of awakening and enlightenment. Okay, in all actuality, there is an ancient belief that if you actually enter this stage, you will not be in it for very long. And that's because your physical body will dissolve into a spiritual being of light, much akin to a metamorphosis into an angel. Having said that, I'll do my best to describe this in a way that you'll be able to at least get a human grasp on a highly spiritual and divine final chapter. In essence, this chapter is post-awakening and full enlightenment. As mentioned, for the 3rd, 4th, or 5th time, this final chapter in your awakening does not mean you are associated with any religious affiliation, such as in the case of futurist Nikola Tesla. However, it can also be that you are indeed an integral part of a spiritual or religious community, such as Jesus was for the Christians before his ascension, or how Mother Teresa was for the Catholics, even how the Dalai Lama is for the Buddhists today. It is therefore important to reiterate that your spiritual awakening and this eventual enlightenment stage or chapter is not necessarily religious based, although it has many signs of being just that, particularly in regard to a divine connection with a spiritual or the spiritual being, the I am, the all, the great spirit. Okay, so let me repeat that. It's therefore important to reiterate that your spiritual awakening and eventual enlightenment is not necessarily religious based, although it has many signs of being just that, particularly in regards to a divine connection with a supreme being. So, if you are still on earth with a non-translated physical body, it's extremely likely that you'll be an honored and respected master teacher and spiritual leader, such as in the case of the Dalai Lama. You are a high vibration visionary and a healer, also very much in tune with the natural world, such as trees and wildlife. It is believed that you can heal the forest or an injured creature with just your mind and divine, loving thoughts. Innocent wildlife, such as deer and birds, are drawn to you, as are all innocent children. It's because you radiate and emanate glorious love and kindness. In this chapter, you will also notice an innate ability to resonate energetically with others, and at times you'll be providing physical and spiritual healing. The recipients of your beautiful divine gift may not truly understand how much they needed it, but eventually they will understand that they were in contact with an angelic being that was manifest in a human body. This also means you emanate quantum empathy. By being in your presence, people become energized and emotionally healed. Your innermost being discerns what others are going through before they even say a word, then acts on their behalf. As mentioned previously, besides your ability to heal others, you additionally have a deep calling to heal nature. It's very possible, if you're not a religious teacher, you'll be a leader of an environmental group to save pine trees, or the director of a volunteer community garden focused on sustainability through the planting of nutritious edibles or teas. Now that you've achieved enlightenment, your dreams are extremely lucid and realistic, as are your interpretations of them. During sleeping hours, you participate in metaphysical journeys to distant realms. You also converse with beings of light that provide insight into a personalized meaning for just you, especially how to conduct ongoing luminous work on earth, such as healing and teaching. Not only have you given up all forms of smoking, drugs, and alcohol, but you additionally have no inkling or desire to ever complain about your situation or criticize the actions of others. Political concerns are a distant idea to you and have been replaced with a guru-like presence where no such unproductive discussion is part of your thinking or awareness. Because of your enhanced state of clarity and intuition, there is no such thing as failure to you. In fact, working in any formalized career is the last thing you will focus your time on. That does not mean you do not have enough resources to afford to live on earth or even drive to your next ministry of service, okay? We're not talking about living in a cave here. But the ever foolish pursuit of money or recognition or external praise is simply no longer present in your mind. In a word, you have mastery of the spiritual awakening journey. You are totally and completely committed to the beauty and freedom it possesses, and the work that you do is not work at all. but rather a blending of all your knowledge and spiritual experience to benefit the collective consciousness of the universe. You therefore have a profound grasp of the law of entanglement, and you are an integral part of it. Your full enlightenment after the long, arduous journey of a true awakening has become the pinnacle of your meaning and potential as a luminous human and spiritual being. Your ego identity is completely gone. Selfishness no longer exists. And what remains is your sacred luminosity, your enlightened consciousness, and your profoundly beautiful divine glow. Thank you.